The other question I had was about your fiction. One of the things I liked about your early novels is how you tried your hand at different genres. From the literary to like The Black House was kind of a gothic novel. The Family Arsenal you could see as a thriller. Ozone was science fiction. Fictional autobiography we've mentioned, My Other Life and My Secret History. They were all tied together with the sort of compelling detail or bit of revealing dialogue that I associate with your writing. But was this a conscious decision to experiment with form at that time, or did it just sort of happen that way?
I think both. I think partly being inspired by circumstances and thinking, I have this idea, but what is the best form for this idea? And what's the best way of telling this story? What's the best form? And so I didn't have a style. I wasn't affecting a style, but I thought I've got an idea, and expressing that idea. I'm not the only person who's done it. I mean, other people have done it. Simenon's done it, and other writers have written in different forms. Um, and so it was conscious to the extent of saying, what is the best way of doing? Like short story. I mean, some
Hmm.
short stories are like ventriloquism, others are like confessions, others are like a thriller, and or a mystery story, whatever it is. That's in microcosm. And I think I've written different forms of shorts. Short story
Hmm.
can be a letter, it could be just a letter, which is a story, it could be just dialogue, which I've done. Um, um, so it's also stimulating to do it, to try something new, like Ozone set in the future, or The Black House as a dark story about the West Country of England. And I think that my travel books have also been different. The Great Railway Bazaar was praised. I've looked at it, there's a lot wrong with it. I mean, it was written by a guy, not the man I am now, but someone who took a trip, didn't know what he was doing, came home to an unhappy marriage, and needed to write a book, and was trying to put the best face on the book. So
Hmm.
that's The Great Railway Bazaar. It's not the book that I wrote later, and it's not the book that I would write now. If you compare that with my Mexico book, On the Plain of Snake, totally different book, totally different. Or the Deep South book, totally different. And so they're all travel books, you could say, but they're different travel books. And so I've learned a lot. I think I'm less flippant. I care more about what I'm doing. I'm trying harder to represent a place, but I'm an old guy now. I mean, that's where I've arrived. And so that was my journey, to use the words that kids use these days. That was my journey. And I've learned a lot. And that's what happens. So it would have been very interesting to know, what would Orwell have done had he lived longer.
Hmm.
He so he did the same thing. His early books are H.G. Wells. Then he's writing a Jack London book. Then he's writing an animal fable. Then he's writing a book about the future. So
Hmm.
other people do it. I mean, and and he was writing a book about Burma in the months that he died. I must look at that. I there's a reference to it, a smoking room story, what he tried. So that's what I've done. Um, because I've spent a lot of time alone at my desk, and to stay interested in what you're doing, to stay fascinated by what you're doing, you have to care about what you write. And I'm not just making up stories. I need seriously to care about what I'm doing. An early question that Naipaul asked was, why are you writing this book? Ask yourself why you're writing this book. And if you can't answer that question, you shouldn't be writing it. Don't play with art, was one of his lines. I learned a lot from him. He was a very imperfect person, but I learned a lot. And so the different forms that I've used probably reflect my reading. I read thrillers, I read detective stories, I read books about the future, I read autobiographical fiction. So there you are. It reflects my life, and it reflects my reading, which is all I want any reasonable, sensible, truthful writer would say, I think.
It's interesting that you